I'm Elaine Walker, 32, and I stood frozen in my childhood kitchen as my mother's scream echoed through the house. "You ungrateful bitch." The Christmas Eve dinner I refused to cook lay in shambles across the floor where she'd thrown it. 25 relatives stared in shock from the dining room. For 15 years, I'd been the family's unpaid holiday chef. But today, I finally said no. What nobody knew was that I'd discovered their group chat, where they mocked my cooking while demanding I make it. Nobody expected what I'd do next, or how this Christmas would change our family forever. Before I dive into the full story, I'd love to know where you're watching from today. Is anyone else dealing with family drama this holiday season? If my story resonates with you, hit that like button and subscribe to see how I turned this Christmas disaster into the most important lesson my family ever learned. Trust me, what happened next is something you won't want to miss. My journey as the family's designated holiday chef began when I was 17. My grandmother, Eleanor, who had always prepared our Christmas feasts, fell ill with pneumonia just 2 weeks before the holiday. As the oldest granddaughter who had shown interest in cooking, all eyes turned to me. "Elaine is such a natural in the kitchen," my mother, Rebecca, announced to everyone without consulting me first. "She'll handle Christmas dinner this year." I remember the panic that flooded through me. Sure, I could make pasta and bake cookies, but preparing a traditional Christmas dinner for 20 people? That was a completely different level. Still, with Grandma Eleanor looking so frail and everyone nodding in agreement, how could I say no? I spent hours on the phone with my grandmother, writing down her recipes and instructions. I stayed up late reading cookbooks, watching Food Network, and practicing techniques. When Christmas Eve arrived, I was terrified but determined. The turkey was a bit dry and the gravy had lumps, but everyone raved about the meal. "You're a natural. Just like your grandmother," Uncle Robert declared, patting my shoulder. "This is the beginning of a wonderful new tradition," my mother announced, raising her glass in a toast. I beamed with pride, not recognizing the trap I was walking into. The next year, it was simply assumed I would cook again, even though Grandma was fully recovered. She offered to help, but my mother waved her off. "No, Mom, you should rest. Elaine's got this down pat now." And just like that, I became the permanent holiday chef. At first, I enjoyed it. Cooking became my passion, and I eventually enrolled in culinary school. By 22, I was creating elaborate multi-course meals that impressed even my grandmother. By 25, I was a sous chef at Rosetta's, one of the most prestigious restaurants in the city. Yet, despite my professional success, my family continued to treat me like the household help during holidays. While everyone else relaxed, watched football, and enjoyed pre-dinner cocktails, I was confined to the kitchen for days of preparation and hours of cooking. No one offered to assist beyond the occasional half-hearted "need any help." That was really just a formality. They knew I would say I had it under control because that's what I'd been conditioned to say. The expectations grew each year. What started as a simple turkey dinner evolved into gourmet feasts with appetizers, multiple sides, and fancy desserts. Dietary restrictions multiplied mysteriously. Cousin Megan suddenly developed a gluten sensitivity, but only during holiday meals. Uncle Paul went keto and demanded special dishes. Aunt Karen would only eat organic, locally sourced ingredients that I was expected to procure. "You're a professional chef now," my mother reminded me whenever I expressed concern about the growing demands. "This should be easy for you." What they didn't seem to understand was that being a professional chef meant I worked incredibly long hours at the restaurant. The holidays weren't a break for me, they were just more work, but without the paycheck. The financial burden fell entirely on my shoulders, too. In the beginning, my mother had offered to reimburse me for ingredients, but that stopped after the 3rd year. By my calculation, I was spending nearly $1,000 each Christmas on top-quality ingredients, specialty items for dietary restrictions, and expensive wines. That doesn't even count the vacation days I had to take to begin preparations. "It's your contribution to the family," my sister Jessica said dismissively when I once brought up sharing costs. "We all contribute in different ways." Her contribution, apparently, was showing up with a cheap bottle of wine and criticizing my plating technique. My brother Michael was even worse. He would arrive late, complain if anything wasn't perfect, and never once offered to help clean up. Yet somehow he was regarded as the golden child because of his success as a corporate lawyer. The fact that I was second in command at one of the city's top restaurants seemed inconsequential in comparison. The toll on my personal life grew heavier each year. For the past 5 Christmases, I'd had to decline my boyfriend Dylan's invitations to join his family's celebration. They always celebrated on Christmas Eve, the same night I was expected to perform culinary miracles for my ungrateful relatives. "I can't keep doing this, Elaine," Dylan said last month, as we discussed holiday plans. "My family is important too. They've been understanding for years, but they're starting to think you don't want to meet them." "You know that's not true," I protested. "It's just that your family expects you to sacrifice everything while they do nothing," he interrupted. "At some point, you need to stand up for yourself and for us." I knew he was right. I promised myself that this would be the last year of this arrangement. I would fulfill my obligation one final time, then have a serious conversation with my family about rotating holiday responsibilities in the future. Little did I know that events would unfold in a way I never could have anticipated. I arrived at my parents' house 3 days before Christmas, as usual, to begin the extensive preparation. My mother greeted me with a quick hug before handing me a list of additional requests. "Aunt Susan is bringing her new boyfriend, and he's allergic to shellfish, so you'll need to adjust the appetizers," she said. "And Jessica's kids are going through a picky phase, so maybe something simple for them." I nodded, already mentally revising my menus as I headed to the kitchen to unpack the groceries I'd brought. The house was quiet. Everyone else would arrive on Christmas Eve, leaving me to work in peace. Or so I thought. My mother's iPad was on the kitchen counter, still unlocked. As I moved it aside to make space for my ingredients, a notification popped up from a group chat called Christmas Dinner Planning. Thinking it might contain useful information about guest preferences, I tapped on it. What I saw made my blood run cold. The group included nearly every adult family member except me. The most recent message was from my sister Jessica. "Just smile and tell Elaine her appetizers are amazing. Last year's were bland as hell, but it makes her feel special." My hands trembling, I scrolled up to see more messages. My mother. "Just let her think we love her mushroom risotto. It makes her feel special. We can order pizza after she goes to bed like last year." Brother Michael. "Just pretend to eat it and dump it when she's not looking. That's what I always do with the Brussels sprouts." Aunt Susan. "Why does she always use so much garlic? Everything tastes the same." Uncle Robert. "At least we get free food. Professional chef and still can't season properly, lol." I kept scrolling, my stomach knotting with each new message. Years of conversations mocking my cooking while simultaneously demanding more elaborate meals. Photos of family members secretly throwing away food I had spent hours preparing. Discussions about which restaurants to order real dinner from after I went to bed. Exhausted from cooking all day. There was even a photo from last Christmas of my family gathered around a table of pizza boxes and takeout containers at midnight. Captioned, "The real Christmas dinner begins." They were all smiling, looking happier than they ever did eating my food. The only supportive voice was my cousin Lisa, who occasionally defended me. "You guys are being awful. Elaine works so hard on these meals." But her protests were usually met with eye-rolling emojis or comments about her being too sensitive. The worst betrayal came from my mother. Not only did she participate in the mockery, but she also shared my recipes on her Facebook page, taking full credit for dishes I had created. Another successful Christmas dinner prepared by yours truly. She had captioned a photo of my beef Wellington from 2 years ago. I sat at the kitchen counter for nearly an hour, reading through years of insults and lies. Tears streamed down my face as the full weight of the betrayal sank in. All those years of sacrifice, thousands of dollars spent, countless hours of labor, all for people who didn't even appreciate it enough to eat it, let alone help or contribute. With shaking hands, I took screenshots and sent them to Dylan. "You won't believe what I just found," I texted. He called immediately. "Elaine, this is emotional abuse," he said after I explained everything. "You need to confront them." "I can't just ruin Christmas," I said, still programmed to put my family's needs above my own. "They've been ruining your Christmas for years," he pointed out. You need to stand up for yourself. As we talked, my initial shock gave way to determination. I wasn't going to simply decline to cook next year. I wasn't even going to just walk away from this Christmas. I have a better idea, I told Dylan. This Christmas is going to be very different. I spent the next 2 days appearing to prepare for the feast as usual. I made shopping lists, prepared the kitchen, and nodded along when family members made their special requests as they arrived. But behind my compliant exterior, I was plotting something that would change our family dynamic forever. By December 23rd, most of the family had arrived at my parents' sprawling colonial home in Connecticut. The usual chaos ensued: suitcases in hallways, children running up and down stairs, and everyone gravitating toward the kitchen to check on my progress while grabbing snacks I had prepared. My mother, Rebecca, maintained her usual control over everything. A former interior decorator with a perfectionist streak, she micromanaged every aspect of the holidays, from the color-coordinated gift wrapping to the precise arrangement of ornaments on the tree. Everything had to be magazine-worthy, especially the food I was expected to produce. "Elaine, don't forget we need place cards for dinner. The calligraphy pens are in my office," she instructed while adjusting a garland that was perfectly straight to begin with. "And make sure you're using the good china, not the everyday plates." I noticed how she directed these orders at me while my sister Jessica sat on the couch scrolling through her phone, and my brother Michael was nowhere to be seen, probably still asleep at 11 a.m. Jessica, 2 years younger than me at 30, had always been competitive in a one-sided way. She had followed me to the same college, only to drop out after a year, then married young to a wealthy investment banker. Now, she spent her days as a self-proclaimed lifestyle influencer with 12,000 followers and a blog about luxury living. "I hope you're making the cranberry sauce from scratch this year," she commented without looking up from her phone. The one from last year looked store-bought in my Instagram photos. I bit my tongue. The cranberry sauce she complained about had taken 3 hours to prepare with hand-selected berries, orange zest, and a splash of expensive port wine. Michael finally emerged around noon, heading straight for the refrigerator. At 28, he was the baby of the family and had always been treated as such. Despite being a successful corporate lawyer, he still expected to be waited on at home. "Is there any coffee?" he asked, ignoring the full pot I had brewed an hour earlier. "Right in front of you," I replied, continuing to chop vegetables with more force than necessary. "Can you make a fresh pot? This one's probably cold by now." Before I could respond, our cousin Megan interrupted, coming into the kitchen with her usual dramatic flair. "Elaine! I hope you remembered that I can't have gluten this year. Or dairy. Actually, I think I might be going fully plant-based now." Megan, Aunt Karen's daughter, discovered a new dietary restriction each holiday, always announced at the last minute. Last Easter, she had been keto. Last Christmas, sugar-free. None of these restrictions seemed to apply when dessert was served. "I've adjusted the menu," I said simply, not elaborating on the fact that I'd spent weeks researching gluten-free, dairy-free alternatives that would still satisfy everyone else. Uncle Robert and Aunt Karen arrived shortly after, bringing in a gust of cold air and loud opinions. Robert, my father's brother, had the family's entitled attitude refined to an art form. "Elaine, I brought the wine I like," he announced, placing a cheap bottle of Merlot on the counter. "Make sure it's properly aerated before dinner." No hello. No thank you for cooking for all of us. Just another demand. Aunt Karen immediately began inspecting the kitchen, opening drawers and cabinets as if conducting a health inspection. "You're using organic vegetables, right? Conventional produce causes all sorts of health issues." This from a woman who smoked a pack a day and considered Diet Coke a breakfast beverage. Through it all, my grandmother Eleanor sat in the corner of the living room, watching with a mixture of amusement and concern. At 85, she was still sharp as a tack but had gradually ceded control of family gatherings to my mother. She caught my eye and gave me a sympathetic smile, seemingly the only one who noticed the increasing demands being placed on me. What no one seemed to notice was that I wasn't my usual frantic, people-pleasing self. Normally by this point, I would be stress cooking, trying to accommodate every request while maintaining a cheerful facade. This year, I moved with calm deliberation, making notes but not rushing to fulfill every demand. Cousin Lisa, the only one who had defended me in the group chat, noticed the change. She found me alone in the pantry, taking inventory of spices. "You seem different this year," she observed. "More? I don't know. Peaceful? Even with all the chaos?" I gave her a meaningful look. "Let's just say I've had some revelations recently." "About?" she probed. I lowered my voice. "About how much my cooking is really appreciated around here." Understanding dawned on her face. "You saw the group chat." I nodded. "I'm so sorry, Elaine. I tried to tell them they were being awful, but it's not your fault," I assured her. "But things are going to change this year. I could use an ally when it all goes down." She squeezed my arm. "Whatever you're planning, I'm with you. They've taken advantage of you for too long." As the day progressed, I observed the family dynamics with new clarity. The hierarchy was painfully obvious. My father at the top, by virtue of providing the house and money, though he was mostly absent, working even during holidays. My mother as the queen bee, directing everyone's movements. Michael and Jessica as the favored children who could do no wrong. And me, invisible until needed, taken for granted until something went wrong. By Christmas Eve morning, the tension in the house was rising. Family members kept checking the kitchen, noticing the lack of usual preparation with increasing anxiety. "Shouldn't the turkey be in the oven by now?" my mother asked, eyeing the empty roasting pan. "I'm trying something different this year," I replied vaguely. Her eyes narrowed, but she said nothing. As afternoon approached and still no cooking had begun, the questions became more direct. "Elaine, when are you starting dinner?" Uncle Robert asked. "We're all getting hungry." "Soon," I said, calmly sipping my coffee. My mother cornered me in the hallway. "What game are you playing? Dinner is supposed to be at 6, and you haven't even turned on the oven." I met her gaze steadily. "I'm not playing any game, Mom, but we need to talk about dinner arrangements." For the first time, uncertainty flickered across her face. She wasn't used to me standing firm. "What is there to talk about? You always cook Christmas dinner. It's tradition." "Traditions can change," I said simply, walking past her toward the kitchen where the family was gathering, sensing a confrontation brewing. The stage was set for the moment I'd been preparing for. By 5 o'clock on Christmas Eve, the tension in the house was palpable. Family members kept wandering into the kitchen, expecting to see the usual holiday feast underway. Instead, they found me sitting calmly at the island counter, sipping a glass of wine and scrolling through my phone. No turkey roasting in the oven, no pots bubbling on the stove, no appetizer trays being arranged. Nothing but an untouched kitchen and a serene chef. My mother, Rebecca, was the first to break. She stormed into the kitchen, her holiday sweater slightly askew and her carefully applied makeup creasing with worry. "Elaine, what is going on? Dinner should be in an hour, and you haven't even started cooking." The room fell silent as relatives gathered in the doorway, sensing drama. I took another sip of wine before responding. "I'm not cooking dinner this year," I said simply. My mother's face went through a series of expressions: confusion, disbelief, and then anger. "What do you mean you're not cooking?" "Of course you're cooking. You always cook Christmas dinner." "Not this year," I replied, my voice steady despite my pounding heart. My sister Jessica pushed her way to the front of the crowd. "Is this some kind of joke? There are 25 people here expecting dinner." 25 people perfectly capable of cooking for themselves, I pointed out. Or ordering takeout. "I hear that's what you all prefer anyway." A murmur ran through the crowd. My brother Michael stepped forward, employing his courtroom voice. "Elaine, be reasonable. Everyone's been looking forward to this meal. You can't just back out at the last minute." "Actually, I can," I said, standing up. "For 15 years, I've spent thousands of dollars and countless hours cooking meals that apparently none of you even want to eat. I'm done." "What are you talking about?" my mother demanded, though a flicker of unease crossed her face. "The group chat. Mom. Christmas dinner planning." I saw everything. The color drained from her face. Behind her, several relatives shifted uncomfortably. We were just what? Just mocking the food I spend days preparing? Just planning to order pizza after I go to bed?" Just throwing away dishes I spent hours making? Uncle Robert stepped forward, attempting to diffuse the situation with his usual patronizing tone. Now, Elaine, don't be so sensitive. We were just having a little fun. At my expense, I replied, while I exhausted myself cooking for everyone. Well, what are we supposed to eat tonight? Aunt Karen demanded, hands on her hips. That's not my problem anymore. My mother's face darkened with rage. She strode to the refrigerator and yanked open the door, pulling out a tray of deviled eggs I'd prepared yesterday as a pre-confrontation peace offering. You ungrateful little, she sputtered, her voice rising to a shriek. After everything we've done for you? You ungrateful bitch! With a sweeping motion, she hurled the tray across the kitchen. Deviled eggs splattered across the floor and walls as the ceramic plate shattered. A collective gasp went up from the family. I stood perfectly still, staring at my mother. In all my 32 years, I'd never seen her lose control like this in front of the extended family. Her perfect hostess image was shattered as surely as the plate on the floor. Rebecca! My grandmother Eleanor's sharp voice cut through the shocked silence. She pushed through the crowd, leaning heavily on her cane. What is the meaning of this? My mother looked at the mess on the floor, then at the horrified faces of our relatives. The magnitude of her outburst seemed to dawn on her. Mom Elaine is refusing to cook dinner. On Christmas Eve. With everyone here? Grandmother Eleanor turned to me, her eyes sharp. Elaine, explain yourself. Rather than answering immediately, I walked to the living room and picked up my laptop. I think it would be better if I showed you. I connected the laptop to the television and pulled up the screenshots I'd taken of the group chat. As the first messages appeared on screen, audible gasps and uncomfortable shuffling filled the room. Last year's turkey was dry as the Sahara, but don't tell Elaine. Uncle Robert. Just smile and eat 2 bites before finding an excuse to leave the table. Brother Michael. Don't worry about the food, I've already ordered pizza for later. Mother. I scrolled through dozens more messages, years of mockery and disrespect displayed for everyone to see. Photos of my carefully prepared food in trash cans. Complaints about dishes that had taken days to perfect. My mother taking credit for my recipes on social media. Grandmother Eleanor's face hardened with each new revelation. Is this true? She asked, looking around at the guilty faces of her children and grandchildren. No one answered. Cousin Lisa stepped forward. It's all true. I tried to tell them they were being cruel, but no one listened. Aunt Susan's boyfriend, attending his first family Christmas, edged toward the door as if contemplating escape. So, I said, closing the laptop, now you all understand why I won't be cooking tonight. Or any other holiday, for that matter. But what about dinner? Cousin Megan wailed, seemingly missing the point entirely. I suggest you start calling restaurants, I replied, though I imagine most places are closed or booked solid on Christmas Eve. The reality of the situation began to sink in. Uncle Robert pulled out his phone and started dialing. Tony's Pizza? Yes, I'd like to place an order for delivery. A pause. What do you mean you're not delivering tonight? It's Christmas Eve. Another pause. Hello? Hello? He looked at his phone. They hung up on me. Similar scenarios played out as other family members attempted to secure last-minute reservations or deliveries. The growing panic was almost comical. Everything's closed or booked, Jessica announced, her face pale. We can't even get Chinese takeout. My mother, who had been sitting silently in shock, suddenly stood up. Her voice was icy as she addressed me. You planned this. You deliberately waited until it was too late to make other arrangements. Yes, I admitted. I did. How could you do this to your family? To ruin Christmas for everyone? The irony of her question was not lost on me or on Grandmother Eleanor, who made a disgusted sound. Rebecca, enough, my grandmother said. From what I've seen, this family has been ruining Christmas for Elaine for years. I think we all need to sit down and have a serious conversation. The family gathered in the living room, an unusual tension hanging in the air. Usually, this space would be filled with laughter and conversation, relatives catching up while I worked alone in the kitchen. Now, they sat in uncomfortable silence, eyes downcast as if at a funeral rather than a holiday gathering. I stood at the front of the room, feeling oddly calm. Years of resentment and hurt had built to this moment, and now that it was here, I felt nothing but a strange sense of peace. For 15 years, I've been responsible for cooking every holiday meal. I want to show you exactly what that has meant. I pulled out a folder and removed a spreadsheet I'd prepared. Meticulous and detailed, a trait that made me successful in professional kitchens. I've spent approximately $15,000 of my own money on ingredients over the years, I said, handing copies to several family members. That's not counting special equipment, serving dishes, or the cookbooks I bought to learn new techniques to impress you all. My mother attempted to interrupt, but Grandmother Eleanor silenced her with a look. I've spent over 450 hours cooking for holidays. That's nearly 3 straight weeks of my life, working 12-hour days in the kitchen while everyone else relaxed and enjoyed themselves. I projected more screenshots on the TV, showing the group chat conversations in chronological order. Here's what I got in return: mockery, criticism, and disrespect. The evidence was damning. Messages from Aunt Susan complaining about my seasoning choices. Uncle Robert joking that my beef Wellington looked like a dog's breakfast. My mother instructing everyone to just pretend to enjoy it while planning alternative meals. Most painful were the photos of my food in garbage cans, sometimes barely touched. Dishes I had spent days perfecting, tossed away without a second thought. I watched as Grandmother Eleanor's expression darkened with each new revelation. She had taught me to cook, had passed down family recipes with pride. Seeing her recipes, our shared heritage, treated with such disrespect clearly wounded her deeply. This isn't just about unappreciated cooking, I continued. It's about how this family treats me versus everyone else. I outlined the disparities. How my brother Michael was praised for his corporate success while my culinary achievements were minimized. How Jessica's social media influence was celebrated while my restaurant reviews went unmentioned. How everyone's time was valued except mine. When Michael needs to work during a holiday, it's understood and respected. When I needed to work Easter brunch service last year, the biggest day at the restaurant, I was guilted for weeks. My mother tried to defend herself. That's different. Family should come first. I am family, I said firmly. But I've been treated like the help. I showed them an email from my boss at Rosetta's, congratulating me on a glowing review in the city magazine. I'd forwarded it to my family's group email. No one had responded. Then I showed them my mother's Facebook post from the same day. So proud of my son Michael for closing his big case today. 42 likes and comments. A visible discomfort spread through the room. Some family members looked genuinely ashamed. Others seemed defensive, unwilling to accept their part in this pattern. Uncle Paul surprised me by speaking up first. "Elaine, I owe you an apology," he said, his voice unusually subdued. "I never thought about how much work went into these meals. I just showed up and ate. I'm sorry." His sincerity broke something in the room. Aunt Susan followed, admitting that her criticisms stemmed from jealousy of my culinary talent. "I could never make anything half as good as what you cook, so I picked it apart instead. It was wrong." Not everyone was so quick to acknowledge their behavior. Uncle Robert and Aunt Karen sat stonily, clearly seeing themselves as the wronged parties in this situation. My brother Michael stared at his phone, uncomfortable but unwilling to engage. My mother remained silent, her lips pressed into a thin line. Grandmother Eleanor finally spoke, her voice trembling with emotion. "I am deeply disappointed in this family," she said, looking around the room. "When I taught Elaine to cook, it was about sharing love through food. It was about bringing family together, not exploiting one person's talent and generosity." She turned to my mother. "Rebecca, I raised you better than this. Taking credit for Elaine's cooking? Planning secret meals after she's gone to bed? I'm ashamed." My mother flinched as if slapped. "I wasn't trying to punish them. Not really. I just wanted them to understand. The thing is," I continued, my voice softening, "this hasn't just hurt me. It's damaged my relationship with all of you, and with others in my life." I told them about Dylan, how our 5-year relationship was strained because I always prioritized their demands over our time together. How he had never experienced a holiday with me because I was always cooking for a family that didn't even appreciate it. "He's been thinking about breaking up," I admitted, vulnerability creeping into my voice for the first time. Because he feels like he'll always come second to a family that takes me for granted. This personal revelation seemed to hit home in a way that the financial and time calculations hadn't. Several relatives looked genuinely distressed at the thought that their behavior had jeopardized my relationship. As the weight of all these revelations settled over the room, the family began to divide. Some, like Cousin Lisa, Uncle Paul, and Grandmother Eleanor, moved physically closer to me, signaling their support. Others, like Uncle Robert and Aunt Karen, withdrew further, clinging to their indignation. My sister Jessica, never comfortable with emotional confrontations, broke the tension by asking the question everyone was thinking. So what happens now? Are we just not having Christmas dinner? I took a deep breath. It was time for the final part of my plan. Actually, I said, checking my watch, dinner will be ready in about 30 minutes. Confusion spread across the room. My mother looked up sharply. What are you talking about? You said you weren't cooking. I said I wasn't cooking, I clarified. I never said there wouldn't be food. I nodded to Cousin Lisa, who slipped out of the room. A moment later, the doorbell rang. When she returned, she was followed by 3 staff members from Rosetta's, the restaurant where I worked, each carrying large insulated food containers. I catered the entire meal from my restaurant, I explained as the professional servers began setting up a buffet in the dining room. Chef Marco and the team prepared everything according to my recipes and specifications. The family watched in amazement as container after container was opened, revealing a complete gourmet Christmas feast. Herb-roasted turkey, prime rib, all the traditional sides, and several of my signature dishes that had earned rave reviews at the restaurant. You went to all this trouble just to prove a point? My mother asked, confusion evident in her voice. No, I replied. I did it because despite everything, you're still my family, and I didn't want to ruin Christmas. But things are going to be different from now on. I gestured toward the dining room where the servers had finished arranging the beautiful spread. Everyone is welcome to enjoy this meal, but there are conditions. The family looked at me expectantly. First, each person needs to acknowledge their behavior and offer a genuine apology. Not just empty words, but a real understanding of how their actions affected me. I let that sink in before continuing. Second, we're going to establish new boundaries for future family gatherings. The responsibility for hosting and cooking will rotate among all households. Everyone will contribute, either by preparing food, helping with setup, or cleaning afterward. No one person will carry the entire burden anymore. Uncle Robert scoffed. And if we don't agree to these conditions, then you don't eat, I said simply. You're welcome to leave and find whatever restaurant might still be open on Christmas Eve. He looked around for support, but found none. Even his wife, Aunt Karen, seemed unwilling to back him up this time. This is ridiculous, he muttered. I'm not going to be blackmailed for a meal. It's not blackmail, Grandmother Eleanor said sharply. It's accountability. Something this family has apparently been lacking for quite some time. One by one, family members approached me. Some apologies were heartfelt and genuine. Uncle Paul admitted he'd never considered the work involved. I just assumed you enjoyed doing everything. I should have asked instead of taking you for granted. My sister Jessica's apology was awkward but sincere. I was jealous, she admitted. You're so talented, and I'm not good at anything the way you're good at cooking. So I criticized to make myself feel better. I'm sorry. Brother Michael struggled the most, uncomfortable with emotional vulnerability. I didn't think it was a big deal, he mumbled. But I see now it was. I'm sorry I didn't help more. My mother's apology came last. And hardest. She had always been the family matriarch, unused to admitting fault. I wanted everything to be perfect, she said, her voice quiet, like my mother's Christmases were. But somewhere along the way, I forgot that family means everyone working together, not one person doing everything while the rest of us enjoy it. She looked up at me, tears in her eyes. I'm so sorry, Elaine. I've been a terrible mother to you, and I didn't even see it. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. The only holdouts were Uncle Robert and Aunt Karen, who announced they would be leaving rather than participate in this emotional hostage situation. No one tried to stop them. As the family moved toward the dining room, I outlined my vision for future gatherings. I've created a rotation schedule for hosting holidays. Each household will take turns, and everyone will contribute something: cooking, setup, or cleanup. Cousin Lisa suggested something unexpected. What if we also did family cooking lessons? Elaine could teach us some basics, and we could all learn to make at least one special dish. The idea caught on immediately. Even my brother Michael expressed interest in learning to cook something beyond microwave meals. As we settled around the table, the atmosphere had transformed. There was a new awareness, a recognition of the unequal dynamics that had persisted for years. It wasn't perfect. Healing rarely happens in a single evening, but it was a beginning. The doorbell rang again, and this time it was Dylan. I had texted him after the confrontation, asking him to join us. "I hope it's okay that I invited him," I told my mother. "He's an important part of my life that I've kept separate for too long." To my surprise, she embraced him warmly. "Of course it's okay. We should have had him here years ago." As Dylan took the seat beside me, I made an announcement that I'd been waiting months to share. "Since we're all together, there's something else you should know." I reached for Dylan's hand. "We're engaged." Gasps and congratulations erupted around the table. Grandmother Eleanor wiped away tears of joy. "I've wanted to tell you for weeks," I admitted. "But I needed to resolve this situation first. I needed to know that we could have a healthier relationship moving forward before bringing Dylan fully into the family." As we enjoyed the professionally prepared meal which everyone genuinely praised, I felt a weight lifting that I hadn't even realized I'd been carrying. For the first time in 15 years, I was eating a Christmas dinner rather than worrying about serving it. The catered Christmas dinner was a revelation in more ways than one. As the family savored each dish, their genuine praise flowed freely, very different from the performative compliments of previous years. "This mushroom risotto is incredible, Elaine," my sister Jessica said, helping herself to a second serving. "I've never tasted anything like it at a restaurant." "It's your recipe?" asked Uncle Paul. "Yes." I nodded. "Chef Marco prepared it exactly as I do at the restaurant." My mother took a thoughtful bite. "It's so much more complex than I realized. I can taste so many layers of flavor." She paused, seeming to struggle with her next words. "I think I never really paid attention before. I was too busy thinking about how everything looked for my social media posts." This simple admission that she had been more concerned with appearances than appreciation struck me as a significant step forward. As the meal progressed, more revelations surfaced. Jessica confessed that her criticism of my cooking stemmed from insecurity about her own domestic skills. "You were always so naturally talented," she explained. "Mom would compare my attempts at cooking to yours. So eventually I just stopped trying and started criticizing instead. It was easier than feeling inadequate." This sparked a deeper conversation about our mother's tendency to compare us, something Rebecca acknowledged with genuine remorse. "I pitted you against each other without realizing it," she admitted. "My mother did the same to me and my sisters. It's a cycle I should have broken." Grandmother Eleanor nodded knowingly. "And I probably did it to you, Rebecca." These patterns run deep in families. The conversation turned to why they had criticized my cooking while simultaneously demanding more of it. "I think we took you for granted because you made it look so easy," Michael said, uncharacteristically reflective. "Like it wasn't really work because you're a professional." "Being a professional makes it work by definition," I pointed out. "Imagine if I asked you to handle complex legal matters for the entire family for free, year after year, while everyone criticized your briefs behind your back." He winced. "When you put it that way, I sound like a complete jerk." "Not a jerk," I corrected, "just unaware of the double standard." To my surprise, Cousin Megan made a startling confession about her ever-changing dietary restrictions. "I don't actually have gluten sensitivity," she admitted, looking embarrassed. "Or dairy issues. I just wanted attention." Everyone else has something special. Michael has his law career. Jessica has her influencer status. You have your chef skills. My restrictions made me feel important, like people had to consider me specifically. Rather than the annoyance I might have felt before, I found myself sympathizing with her need to stand out. "Next time, just tell me you'd like a special dish," I suggested. No need to invent medical conditions. Uncle Paul, usually reserved about personal matters, shared how my cooking had actually inspired him. I've been taking cooking classes for the past year, he revealed. Your passion for it made me realize I'd always wanted to learn. I was too embarrassed to tell you, especially after making those critical comments. As the evening progressed, Dylan integrated seamlessly into the family, sharing stories of our relationship that I'd never had the opportunity to tell them myself. He recounted our first date at a farmer's market, our cooking competitions at home, and the elaborate proposal he had planned at the restaurant where we met. I've heard so much about all of you, he told them. It's nice to finally put faces to names. What went unspoken but understood was how much of what he'd heard hadn't been positive. Yet here he was, engaging warmly with my family, giving them a second chance just as I was. Grandmother Eleanor, seated at the head of the table in her rightful position as family matriarch, watched the proceedings with tears in her eyes. This reminds me of Christmases when your grandfather was alive, she told me quietly. Everyone contributing, everyone appreciated. Somewhere along the way, we lost that spirit. As dessert was served, a spectacular bûche de Noël that drew gasps when presented the conversation turned to the future. I want to learn to make this, Jessica said, admiring the intricate cake. Would you teach me? Before I could answer, Cousin Lisa jumped in with her earlier suggestion. What about regular family cooking lessons? Elaine could teach us basics, and we could all learn to make at least one special dish for holidays. The idea took root immediately. My mother offered to host monthly cooking sessions in her spacious kitchen. Michael, surprising everyone, volunteered to be the first student. I should know how to make more than scrambled eggs at my age, he admitted. As the conversation flowed more naturally than it had in years, I noticed a remarkable transformation. Family members were making eye contact, asking follow-up questions, and genuinely listening to each other rather than waiting for their turn to speak. The group chat mockery and surface-level interactions had been replaced by authentic connection. I think we needed this wake-up call, Uncle Paul said, gesturing around the table. Not just about the cooking, but about how we treat each other. Family is easy to take for granted, Grandmother Eleanor observed. Sometimes it takes a moment like this to remember what matters. As the evening wound down, plans were made for cooking lessons, rotating holiday duties, and a system for sharing expenses. But more importantly, a new foundation was being built, one of mutual respect and genuine appreciation. When Dylan and I rose to leave, we were staying at a hotel nearby rather than in my old bedroom as I usually did. My mother hugged me tightly. Thank you, she whispered. Not for the food, but for having the courage to break this cycle. I'm so proud of the woman you've become. Coming from her, these words meant everything. For years, I had sought her approval through perfect meals and endless accommodation. Now, ironically, I had finally earned her respect by refusing to continue those very patterns. As we gathered our coats, Grandmother Eleanor pulled me aside. You did what I should have done years ago, she said. I let Rebecca take over and twist the family traditions into something unrecognizable. Thank you for setting things right. Driving back to the hotel, Dylan squeezed my hand. How do you feel? I considered the question carefully. Lighter, I finally said. Like I've put down something heavy I've been carrying for years. Do you think it will last? He asked. The changes, I mean. I don't know, I admitted. But even if we slip back into old patterns sometimes, we can't unknow what we learned tonight. And that's a start. The days following Christmas brought changes I could never have anticipated. My phone, usually silent except for last-minute ingredient questions or additional food requests, buzzed constantly with genuine messages of gratitude and reflection. Jessica texted the morning after Christmas. I can't stop thinking about last night. I'm really sorry for how I've treated you. Could we get coffee this week? Just us? Michael sent a link to a local cooking class. Signed up for Basics 101. Figured I should learn before our family lessons start. Want to laugh at my terrible knife skills? Even my mother's communication style transformed. Instead of her usual directives disguised as questions, she sent thoughtful messages. Thinking about what you said regarding financial burden, Dad and I want to reimburse you for past expenses. It won't fix everything, but it's a start. The family group chat, once a forum for mockery, was renamed Family Appreciation and became a space for genuine connection. Photos of holiday moments were shared, but with a new focus on the joy of being together rather than curating a perfect image. 2 days after Christmas, I met Jessica at a quiet cafe away from the family home. The awkwardness between us was palpable at first. Years of competition and criticism creating a barrier that wouldn't dissolve overnight. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," she began, fidgeting with her napkin, "about why I was so hard on your cooking. It wasn't really about the food at all." I waited, giving her space to continue. "You had this clear talent, this passion that everyone recognized and praised," she continued. "I never found my thing, you know. So instead of finding my own path, I just tried to diminish yours. It was easier than facing my own insecurities." Her vulnerability surprised me. Jessica had always presented herself as supremely confident, the polished social media influencer with the perfect life. "Your life seemed pretty successful from where I was standing," I admitted. "The beautiful house, the Instagram following, the picture-perfect family." She laughed bitterly. "It's all curated. Tom and I have been in marriage counseling for a year. My influencer career barely pays for my coffee habit. I'm just good at making things look better than they are." This revelation opened a door between us. For the next 2 hours, we talked more honestly than we had since childhood. About the pressure to succeed, the competition our mother had unknowingly fostered, and the distance it had created. "I'd like to start over," Jessica said as we were leaving. "Not pretend the past didn't happen, but try to build something better. As sisters, not competitors." Similar conversations unfolded with other family members. Michael invited me to lunch at a restaurant near his law firm, a gesture unprecedented in our adult relationship. "I've been a self-centered jerk," he said bluntly over appetizers. "Not just about the cooking, but about everything. I never ask about your career or your life. It's always been about me." His self-awareness caught me off guard. Michael had always been the golden child, adored by our parents for his academic achievements and professional success. That he could recognize his privileged position in the family was significant. "Why the sudden insight?" I asked. He looked uncomfortable. "Dylan said something to me before you guys left on Christmas. He mentioned that in the 5 years you've been together, I've never once asked him a question about himself or shown interest in your relationship." He winced. When someone points out a pattern like that, it's hard to unsee it. The most surprising transformation came from my mother. She invited me to her house a week after Christmas, ostensibly to return some kitchenware I'd left behind. When I arrived, I found her at the kitchen table with spreadsheets and photo albums spread out before her. "I've been calculating," she explained, gesturing for me to sit. "Trying to figure out exactly how much you've spent on holiday meals over the years." She showed me her work. Meticulous estimates of ingredient costs, equipment, transportation to and from our home, even the vacation days I'd sacrificed. The total she'd reached was higher than my own estimate. "Your father and I want to reimburse you," she said, sliding an envelope across the table. Inside was a check for $20,000. "Mom, I don't need." "Please," she interrupted. "Let me do this. It won't erase what happened, but it's a concrete acknowledgement of the burden we placed on you." I accepted the check, recognizing it as the gesture of reconciliation that it was. "There's something else," she continued, opening one of the photo albums. "I've been looking through old pictures. Before the cooking tradition began, she showed me photographs of Christmases from my childhood. The whole family in the kitchen together, everyone participating in meal preparation. Grandmother Eleanor teaching cousins to roll dough. Uncles carving turkey. Children arranging cookie platters. This is how it used to be," she said softly. "Somehow, over the years, I twisted it into something else entirely. I think I was trying to create a perfect image rather than a perfect experience." Her insight mirrored what I'd felt for years but couldn't articulate. The family holidays had become performances rather than genuine celebrations. The ripple effects extended beyond my immediate family. Cousin Lisa called to tell me that the confrontation had inspired her to address issues in her own relationship. "I watched you stand up for yourself and thought, if Elaine can face her entire family, I can tell my boyfriend I'm tired of doing all the emotional labor in our relationship." Not everyone embraced the changes, of course. Uncle Robert and Aunt Karen maintained a chilly distance. sending a formal note that they would need time to consider future family gatherings. I recognized that some relationships might never fully heal, and that was okay too. The most profound changes occurred in my own life, beyond family relationships. The courage it took to confront years of mistreatment spilled over into other areas where I had remained passive. At the restaurant, I finally stood up to a bullying kitchen manager who had taken credit for my recipe developments. The confrontation led to a meeting with the head chef, who was unaware of the situation. 2 weeks later, I was promoted to head chef when the manager was transferred to another location. In therapy sessions, which I had begun shortly after Christmas, my therapist pointed out how the family confrontation represented a turning point. "You're establishing healthy boundaries in all areas of your life now," she observed. "That's significant growth." Perhaps the most unexpected outcome was a small catering business that grew from the Christmas dinner experience. Impressed by the meal, my mother's friend had asked if I would cater her daughter's engagement party. From there, word spread, and soon I was fielding requests for small, high-end events during my days off from the restaurant. Dylan fully supported this new venture, helping with logistics and even building a website showcasing my culinary creations. Our relationship, freed from the burden of my family obligations, flourished in ways I hadn't thought possible. "I never realized how much the family situation was holding you back," he commented one evening as we collaborated on a menu for an upcoming catering event. "It's like watching a different person emerge." As winter melted into spring, the promised family cooking lessons began. Once a month, we gathered in my mother's kitchen, a smaller group than our holiday gatherings, but committed to building new traditions. I taught basic techniques, knife skills, sauce making, proper seasoning. My family members approached these lessons with surprising enthusiasm. Michael, true to his word, had been practicing independently and proudly demonstrated his improved chopping technique. Jessica, who had always claimed cooking was too difficult, discovered a talent for pastry. Even my mother set aside her controlling tendencies to become a student again, carefully following instructions instead of taking over. These sessions became about more than cooking. They were opportunities to rebuild relationships on a new foundation, one where contributions were valued, skills were acknowledged, and the work was shared. The family continued to have its moments of tension and disagreement, as all families do. Old patterns occasionally resurfaced, requiring gentle reminders about our new agreements. But the fundamental dynamic had shifted. We were learning to see and appreciate each other as we truly were, not as we wished each other to be. As plans began to form for the next holiday gathering, I felt a sense of anticipation rather than dread. For the first time in 15 years, I would be a guest rather than the sole provider. The rotation system we had established placed Jessica as the host for Easter, with everyone assigned specific dishes to contribute. My assignment? Dinner roles and guidance as needed. Nothing more, nothing less, just one equal part of a shared family meal. Christmas Eve arrived with a light snow falling over Connecticut, dusting the trees and rooftops with a perfect holiday glow. As Dylan and I pulled into Jessica's driveway, I felt a strange mixture of emotions. This would be the first Christmas Eve in 16 years that I hadn't spent cooking for the family. "Nervous?" Dylan asked, squeezing my hand before we exited the car. "A little," I admitted. "It's weird to show up empty-handed." That wasn't entirely true. The trunk held carefully wrapped presents and a single culinary contribution, a batch of my signature dinner rolls, the only dish I'd been assigned in our new rotation system. The front door opened before we reached it, and Jessica greeted us with a genuine smile. Behind her, I could see the house transformed. Where my mother had always insisted on formal, magazine-worthy decorations, Jessica had opted for a warmer, more personalized approach. Handmade ornaments from her children adorned the tree. Family photos, real moments, not staged ones, hung alongside traditional garlands. "Welcome to the madhouse," she laughed, ushering us inside. Fair warning, I've already had one minor breakdown over the turkey, but Michael talked me through it. The scene in the kitchen stopped me in my tracks. Michael, wearing an apron emblazoned with sous chef in training, was carefully carving Brussels sprouts. My mother was arranging appetizers on a tray, following a plating diagram I recognized from our cooking lessons. Various cousins and aunts bustled about, each attending to their assigned dishes. Elaine! Grandmother Eleanor called from her seat at the kitchen island, where she was directing operations like a general. Come tell us if we're doing this right. For a moment, I feared they expected me to take over, that the past year's changes had been temporary. But as I approached, I realized they simply wanted my opinion, not my labor. Everything looks amazing, I said, taking in the organized chaos. What can I help with? Absolutely nothing, Jessica declared firmly. You're a guest this year. Your only job is to enjoy yourself and maybe give advice if we completely mess something up. My mother approached with a glass of wine. We made a pact, she explained. No one is allowed to ask you to cook anything tonight. If we get desperate, we'll ask Dylan instead. My fiancé laughed. I make an excellent microwave popcorn. That's about the extent of my culinary skills. The evening unfolded in a way I could never have imagined a year ago. The meal was served buffet-style. Jessica had wisely recognized her limitations and opted for a relaxed approach rather than formal plated service. The food wasn't restaurant quality, but it was prepared with care and genuine effort. The turkey was slightly overcooked, the gravy had a few lumps, and the mashed potatoes could have used more seasoning. But watching my family beam with pride over their creations, I realized none of that mattered. The joy was in the collaborative effort, not the perfect execution. What do you think? Michael asked, anxiously, as I tasted his roasted vegetables. I used that technique you showed us with the high heat and olive oil. They're delicious, I assured him. And they were perhaps not precisely as I would have prepared them. But his pride in the accomplishment made them taste better than any professionally cooked dish. Throughout dinner, I observed the transformed dynamics with amazement. The new family group chat had evolved into a genuinely supportive space where cooking advice was shared, recipes were exchanged, and actual appreciation was expressed. Photos of the preparation process had been posted, not the carefully curated final presentations of previous years, but real moments of learning and occasional mishaps. Aunt Susan, once one of my harshest critics, had become an unexpected ally. After last Christmas's confrontation, she had apologized profusely and then thrown herself into learning proper cooking techniques. I was intimidated by your talent, she confessed as we sat together after dinner. It was easier to criticize than to admit I wished I could cook like you. Your lessons have changed that for me. Even Uncle Robert and Aunt Karen had eventually returned to the family fold, though their participation remained tentative. They had arrived with store-bought pies and awkward smiles, offering a stiff but sincere apology for their behavior the previous year. We've been doing some reflection, Uncle Robert said uncomfortably when we had a moment alone. It's not easy to admit when you've been wrong for so long. I appreciated the effort it took for him to say even that much. The most meaningful transformation was in my relationship with my mother. Rebecca had undergone a genuine evolution, relinquishing her need for control and perfectionism in favor of authentic connection. I've been seeing a therapist. She confided while we washed dishes together, an activity she had volunteered for rather than assigned to someone else, trying to understand why I put so much pressure on you, why appearances became more important than reality. She rinsed a plate before continuing. My mother was the same way with me. Everything had to look perfect, even when it wasn't. I never questioned it until you forced us all to see what we were doing. The engagement party Jessica had insisted on hosting in conjunction with Christmas Eve was a further testament to the family's changed priorities. Last year, my announcement had been an afterthought. This year, it was celebrated with genuine joy. Dylan and I stood together as champagne was poured and toasts were made. My father, usually reticent about emotional matters, gave a heartfelt speech about welcoming Dylan to the family. You've been good for our Elaine, he said, his voice gruff with uncharacteristic emotion. You supported her when we failed to. We won't forget that. The catering business that had sprung from last year's confrontation had flourished beyond my expectations. What began as occasional side gigs had grown into a legitimate enterprise, with bookings months in advance. I'd recently cut back my restaurant hours to accommodate the demand, and Dylan had quit his corporate job to manage the business side of our venture. My cookbook deal, another unexpected outcome, sat prominently displayed on Jessica's coffee table. Family Recipes Reimagined would be published in the spring, featuring modernized versions of Grandmother Eleanor's classic dishes alongside my own creations. As the evening progressed, we gathered in the living room for our new tradition, sharing the lessons we had learned throughout the year. It was Grandmother Eleanor's suggestion, a way to acknowledge growth and maintain our commitment to change. Michael went first. "I've learned that I actually enjoy cooking," he said with a self-deprecating laugh. "And more importantly, I've learned that helping others doesn't diminish me, it actually makes me feel more connected." Jessica spoke about finding her authentic voice. "I've spent so many years curating a perfect image," she admitted. "This year, I've been trying to share real moments instead. It's scary, but it feels more meaningful." My mother's contribution was particularly moving. "I've learned that traditions are meant to evolve," she said. "They should bring joy, not burden. And sometimes breaking a tradition is necessary to build something better." When my turn came, I looked around at the faces of my family, imperfect, occasionally frustrating, but trying so sincerely to be better. "I've learned that standing up for yourself doesn't have to mean standing alone," I said. "Sometimes it's the only way to create space for authentic relationships to grow." As the evening wound down, Jessica called for everyone's attention for a toast. To Elaine and Dylan, she began, raising her glass. Not just for their upcoming wedding, but for the wake-up call we all needed last year. Sometimes it takes someone brave enough to upset the apple cart to make everyone realize there are better ways to gather the fruit. Laughter and applause followed her words. Dylan squeezed my hand under the table, a private acknowledgement of how far we had come. Later, as family members began to depart, Grandmother Eleanor pulled me aside for a private word. "I'm proud of you," she said simply. "Not just for your success or your cooking, but for having the courage to break a harmful cycle. That's the most difficult kind of change to create." Driving home that night, the car filled with leftovers we had been enthusiastically pressed to take a reversal I found deeply amusing, Dylan asked a thoughtful question. "Do you think it would have worked out this way if you'd tried a gentler approach? If you'd just talked to them instead of the dramatic confrontation?" I considered this carefully. "No," I finally said. "Some patterns are too entrenched to change without a significant disruption. We had to break completely before we could rebuild." "Well, I'm glad you broke it," he said. "I like this version of your family much better." "Me too," I agreed, watching the snow-covered scenery pass by. "It's not perfect, but it's real. And that's worth so much more than perfection." As we pulled into our driveway, I felt a profound sense of contentment. The journey from last Christmas Eve to this one had been challenging, with difficult conversations and uncomfortable reckonings. But it had led to authentic growth and healing that I once thought impossible. Sometimes I reflected, you have to be willing to refuse what's expected of you in order to create something better than anyone could have imagined. In standing up for myself, I had ultimately given my family the opportunity to become something stronger, healthier, and more genuine than before. And that was a Christmas miracle worth celebrating. This past year showed me that sometimes standing up for yourself can be the greatest gift to everyone involved. Has anyone else experienced a moment where setting boundaries actually improved your family relationships? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments. If this resonated with you, please subscribe to see more stories about family dynamics, boundaries, and personal growth. Thank you all for joining me on this journey. And remember, true family traditions should nourish everyone, not drain just one person. Like and share if you know someone who needs to hear this message, and I'll see you in the next story.